Hi, it's Louisa Dahl. And welcome to the Interactive Minds podcast, where I talk with passionate marketers, innovators, and digital leaders about their specific recipes for success. In today's show, I interview Flo Lemons from QUT talking about social media. Here's 3 things you're going to learn. 1. How to adapt your social media in a time of crisis. 2. Managing your mental health when you're always on social. And 3. The platforms that Flo is seeing Gen Z most engage with. Let's get into it. Hi, today I'm here with Flo Lemons, who's the social media coordinator at QUT. Welcome to the show, Flo.
Thank you, Louisa, for having me today.
I'm excited to be able to have a bit of a chat with you. I know social media is always a super popular topic, and we've got lots of cool things to talk about. But before we get into it too much, tell me, how did you get into social media in the first place?
I think I'm going to make the really short story here because I can talk about that for a long time. And that's a bit of a personal story. I'm here in Australia since 2012, where I actually came for love, as people really laugh about. And I just joined a girl, then became my fiancée, now my wife. And why Australia is obviously because of the girl, but why social media? I was doing digital marketing back in France and internal communication for AXA, the insurance. And I thought, obviously changing countries and I thought would be the good time to change industry as well. So I kind of pivot slowly to social media, where I had a couple of jobs and contracts there and there. And then obviously turned to a kind of a full-time gig and doing properly social media for now 6 years, kind of full-time.
Excellent. Now, I always laugh with marketing, have a bit of an insider joke where I say, everyone's a marketer. It's something where, a lot of different people in different professions think that they know marketing, and I imagine it's even worse in social media. Do you find that?
Exactly. I think everyone will be a social media marketer at some point, whether you like it or not, whether you do marketing or not. I think that's really important, that social media needs to be embedded across the organization and not only to 1 or 2 or 3 or a team of social media people doing that specific function. I've heard the other day that social media should be some sort of, back in the days, there was one person looking after photocopy. Then after everyone was doing their own photocopy, I think social media, maybe in the next 5, 10, 15 years, everyone will do social media in their job, and there won't be obviously a photocopier or a social media specific people, or at least will be more the strategic than the operational, that will be really embedded into the organization.
Yeah, nice analogy. That's really interesting. Well, tell us a little bit about your current role. What does that involve at QUT?
So I'm at QUT for now about 2 years, since July 2018. I think QUT was doing social media before I started, but really wanted to have direction about all the communication on social media that was need to be done. So I and my team look after the social media corporate channels for QUT. And they are basically one Facebook, I think that's about 170,000 people, Instagram 16,000, and then we have 2 Twitter, I think that's about almost 50,000 people. LinkedIn, that's our biggest community with 200,000 people, and YouTube a bit less than 10,000. So overall, I think that's almost 500,000 people that we talk to on only 5 platforms. My team are looking after those 5 platforms to create content, monitor the engagement, really get the community engaged on those 5 big ones. But also we work really closely with the different faculties, institute, different schools to really enhance social media across the university. So work a lot with different people to make sure that they have their social media in order and they know what they need to post on the platforms.
Yeah, wow. I'd love to delve into those numbers a little bit, actually, because some of them are probably not the ones that I expected were going to be the biggest. For example, LinkedIn is your biggest channel there, which was quite interesting. I mean, obviously it's a big professional channel, but I wouldn't have thought necessarily that it was big with students. Is that the case, or is it more alumni and other connections with the university on LinkedIn?
Correct. That's more alumni and postgraduate. Obviously, I don't know if you remember, maybe only higher education marketers remember that, but there were two types of pages for LinkedIn back in the days. The company page, as everyone knows it, and it was the university pages as well. And they merged. So obviously we gain a lot, or QT gained a lot in that merge. And that's why that's a really large community. And also staff members are actually a lot active and present on our LinkedIn community. That's, I have to say now, LinkedIn is one of our most engaged platform at the moment.
And I suppose anyone who then nominates QUT as their place of study would then kind of be tied to that as well, wouldn't they?
They don't actually follow automatically. So if I become obviously a staff member, I don't necessarily follow the company, but that's definitely something we encourage as well when you an organization is to follow the company page.
All right. So tell me, from your social media perspective, what are your key goals that you're trying to achieve with social media? And I suppose what I mean by that is it, engagement of the community? Are you trying to attract new students or extend students? Or is it a messaging kind of platform for you? How do you approach it, and what's the main outcome you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think the main outcome that we try to achieve on social media for QUT is really to create awareness about our different activities. Either we talk to our prospective student audience where we want them to join QUT, to enroll at QUT. Obviously, my team looks after the organic social media aspect, but also work really closely with the digital marketing team and our media and creative agency to get those messages across. But also that's a lot of engagement that we try to have. I don't think that social media is only a nice thing to have in an organization, and needs to be really thought in terms of an engagement piece. What is it for them to understand or to actually do something? So we create a lot of engagement pieces for our prospective students, but also now we kind of shifted as well a bit towards our students and really making sure that our students know about the different activities, events, online events nowadays, but really getting the sense of what is it to be a QUT student in 2020.
Yeah, great. One of the things I love hearing about is how marketers, and in your case, social media experts, manage their goals and KPIs. In your role, what is a goal that you're trying to achieve on social media, and how would you set that? What kind of metrics or measure of success would you apply to that?
Yeah, I think one of the goals is awareness. So it's really important to get the message across multiple people and more people than we can with other platforms. So obviously we try to think of a business objective for QT. We obviously need to recruit new students, but also we need to really engage with our existing audience. So we try to talk a lot about the different activities on campus, or what they need to know about the different changes at the moment. So we try to always go back to the business objective. We have corporate objectives, and we obviously have marketing objectives, and the social media objectives are definitely linked to that aspect. As I said, that's how we can engage with that existing community, and how we can recruit new students and engage with new students on social media. So KPI might be obviously something we try to do a bit more is the metrics on the web and social at the same time. So how we can make sure we get a referral visit from social, and actually they can stay on the website a bit longer, or what we want them to do on the website, and really track that a bit more linked between social activity and the web activity as well.
And what's the easiest way you found or find to track those various different channels and link it back? What tools do you use to do that?
So obviously, for social media management tool, we use Social Studio, Salesforce Social Studio, and we obviously work really closely with the digital marketing team, as I mentioned, in terms of Google Analytics dashboards, but also Google Data Studio, and really try to have a picture of what people do and what people click. I think before it was really thought in terms of awareness, but I think try to think of that consideration and action phase in the marketing funnel is, as I said, it's not only a nice things to have, but really think of what are the action that we needed them to do on social and needs to also reflect on the website. So for events like open days, we really try to see what people click from either a Facebook post or even in Instagram stories. That's a massive traffic driver for us, and I think for most of the brands out there, and to really see what they do on the website, if they are more likely to register or to actually download the brochure or the planning for open day, for instance. So we try to really link all our activities, marketing activities together.
Yeah, definitely. And I imagine working with a large organization with like QUT, which has many different divisions and departments, that you must have quite a lot of demands coming to you in terms of social media requests. How do you manage those different priorities?
Yeah, we do have a lot of requests. I think that's always scary when I say that over hundreds and hundreds of social media platforms that QT has on social. I think it's important that at the end of the day, QT is one brand, whether that's a faculty, an institute, or something else. So I think that's really important that consistency across social needs to be really thought. But always ask the questions about really the key things are the audiences, the objectives, and the content and resources that you can have behind a Facebook page, an Instagram or LinkedIn page. So you really have to understand and work really closely with those teams, that they need to understand that social media is not a fluffy things to have, but making sure that they get the proper resources and they really think through the content they need to create, how they're supposed to really sustain that content for a long time, because there is, I think, nothing more terrible than having a platform using a brand name that is completely inactive or really outdated. So closely with them to get them going on the platform all the time and make sure that they post frequently.
How do you choose what channels you use for different types of communications? Do you have any kind of hard and fast rules that you apply, or is it case by case?
It's definitely case by case. We try not to have a hard rule. We definitely listen what they have to say and how they think social media is going to change the way they communicate. Social media is not always sometimes the answer, and I think needs to be really included in a really large portfolio of communication channels. So try to really work with them on, is social media the only solution that you have? How is it in other platforms kind of portfolio? And try to see whether that they can create that only social or original social media content. I think a lot of people out there try to take a blog post, post it on social, but don't really create that original piece of content that needs to be native to the platform. So I think that's really working with them and educate them on how they need to think that a blog post is, yes, a piece of content. That's not necessarily a good piece of social media content and needs to actually be developed in a different way, leverage, another type of creative or another type of format as well.
Can you give us an example of how that's happened before and what kind of recommendations you might make?
I think of a couple of teams. They have great video content, but they use as more promotional content. So how they can use some bits and pieces for those video or audio. So try to work with them on some audio quotes, for instance, that you can't post really a 5-minute long video on Facebook. You really have to be a bit smarter and shorter. So how you edit that video to 15, 20 seconds maximum, how can you actually take really 2 or 3 main key points in that video and put it together? If not video, that's actually might be an audio quote. And I think that's definitely something that they need to think more. Rather than using the full assets, how can you slice and dice it to something that actually would be way more engaging on social media platforms?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Now, obviously managing social media at the moment, in our current status of being in a bit of a global crisis with the pandemic, how has that changed for you and what does that look like at the moment?
It looks a bit difficult for not only universities but a lot of brands out there. Obviously, we plan content ahead of time, as everyone should, by the way. And I think we noticed pretty quickly in the last few weeks that we had to drop everything that was planned. Obviously, all events, promotion were obviously on pause. So trying to understand what we are planning to do in the next few weeks. Okay, take that and actually pause it or do something else with it. So we adapted a lot our social media communications due to COVID-19. And I think we try to obviously leverage social media to communicate about those different changes that we had to bring to our learning and teaching system to the students. So try to leverage really a lot those social media platforms where usually I think that's something that needs to be really done carefully, but it worked for us.
How much content now would you say is new and freshly created because of this situation versus what you might have already been planning to post anyway?
Yeah, I think we try to be a bit more planned, yes, but try to leave some space to reactive type of posts because everything changes really fast. I think that's, I don't know, a bit less than 50% or 50% of our content need to be paused or completely rethink to really be adapted for that specific context. So we try to, obviously at QUT, leverage our experts and they have great knowledge about not only the science of COVID-19, but everything that they can bring to our different stakeholders. Obviously, we have a lot of businesses experts at QUT that can talk about businesses pivot, and we can talk as well about working from home tips. We can talk about different type of air quality. There are a lot of experts that can be kind of highlighted out there. So we'll try to leverage that way more than before to really showcase our experts to the world.
And would you say that your engagement has gone up or down or stayed about the same with this change of priorities in your communications?
I've not checked that in detail, but I think I will assume that there is a drop of activities. Our quantity kind of dropped as well, and I will assume that therefore the time or the engagement has dropped as well, because that's definitely something we notice. People engage on social media a lot. In normal time, they consume social media and news through social media, and I think with all the content created out there, it's getting really more difficult to get that or cut through the noise. So I would assume they might have some slight decrease for engagement.
Yeah, fair enough. What advice would you have to other people responsible for their company's social media who might not know how to respond at this time?
Try to not panic. I think it's really, really difficult to not panic in those times when you have to communicate specific messages to your audiences. Listen, obviously monitoring your social media more than usual. We monitor our platform really regularly from early morning to late at night. I think it's really important to monitor those platforms to see whether there might be some issue, but not only is really listen those conversations to make sure that we can create that content for them to really know about. So really listen those conversations if you can. We use, as I said, Social Studio for us, but there are plenty of tools that can do the job, and really compare as well with your competitors to see what they do, how they do things, and that you can learn a lot from their activities.
Yeah, great advice. Now, one of the things that we spoke about very briefly when we were preparing for this chat today was around mental health connected with social. Now, obviously, we're all aware how social media is a very addictive use of our time. And I imagine working in this space, that's amplified. How do you manage your social media involvement, both from a work and obviously overlapping to a personal perspective, to make sure that you're looking after yourself at the same time?
Yeah, I think we are in a new normal of working for not only social media manager out there, but for everyone working from home, working with the kids in the room next door. Everything changes. Skype, Zoom meeting, and then on top of that, social media managers really spend a lot of time on their phones. I'm the first guilty of that. And now that my office is next to my kitchen, I can spend way more time if I wanted to. So I think that's really important that those people looking after social media for their brands is to really keep sane in that situation. What I try to do every day is try to meditate. I know it sounds a bit basic, but that's something that has worked for me for a minimum of 10 minutes a day. And there are plenty of apps, and I use personally Headspace. But there are plenty of apps that can help you to really stop that noise out there and try to really refocus on yourself and what you have to do. So usually do it 2 sessions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And that's kind of my new commute method at the moment, and that worked well for me. Try also personally to kind of remember back in the days, the MySpace Follow Friday. I do now follow Feel Good, so kind of a FFG, and I think try to follow those Feel Good profiles on social, especially on Instagram. Yes, the travel, but also everything that can give you a bit of a laugh, and try to kind of disconnect you on your really workload. That always works for me, and try to rethink of something else. The other thing is that I did last year, because I'm really lucky to have an awesome team member, is I completely disconnected for social media for 2 weeks. So over the Christmas holidays last year, I switched off my professional phone, my work phone, and my personal phone, disconnected logged out of all social media platforms, personal and professional. And obviously she was looking after the QT ones, but that gave me that space. Really that clarity that, yeah, you can live without social, you can do something else, and you can really focus on yourself. Obviously, if you are a solo social media manager, that is a bit difficult. So try to really work on scheduling your posts in advance if necessary, if they don't require a lot of community management, or get someone else to actually just check the community management side of things. Wow. And the last one I tried to do before, that I was doing before, not now because I stopped, but listening to inspirational podcasts or motivational podcasts. That gives me that kind of boost or motivational boost. Now I don't really do it because I don't commute, but I need to pick up that again.
Wow, I love that, digital detox, I suppose, for want of a better term, in terms of having 2 weeks off. I think most people would find that really hard. And I imagine when you're on social for work a lot of the time as well, it must be even harder. How did you find that? Was that difficult for you, or was it something that you were kind of really looking forward to and were able to adapt to pretty easily?
Yeah, I didn't really plan it. I kind of thought a couple of days before, you know what, I asked, I mentioned to my managers and my team, I think I'm going to really log out of everything. And then team member to Bronte can do the specific work. That was really, really good for me. When I get back to my desk in January, I thought, I feel fresh. And usually when you are on weekends or on holidays, you still connected somehow. I think people usually take 2 to 3 weeks to really disconnect. Some people take much faster, but I think those 2 weeks of no social media activity was definitely a really benefit for me. So I would recommend to people to do it if they can.
Yeah, amazing. Awesome. Well, there's some great tips there. I think there's something there for all of us who want to manage our mental health, both with social media and just in general at the moment. So that's really, really awesome to hear. Now, I was just wondering as you were speaking then, when you look back over the social media campaigns and efforts you've been involved in over the last, 6 to 12 months, what stands out in your mind as being something that's been particularly effective or that you're proud of or that, maybe even delivered a surprising result for you?
Yeah, I think we try to test things to learn. I think that's definitely something that QT really gave me the chance and the opportunity to try new things, test new platforms, try new type of content, and see if they work. If they don't work, I guess you learn from that and you move on, and you really get the benefits out of them. And I think that's definitely something that worked really well for us and my team is try new things. And if we crash, we crash. We just move on and try to adapt. So tools, I know sounds a bit really basic, but content type like Instagram stories that QT didn't really do before 2018, and try to leverage that because to us is definitely, especially for our Gen Z audience, we try to obviously communicate through that channel that, as I mentioned, got a lot of engaging results from that. Click through, but also conversation with people and try to have more conversation with audiences on a platform that they actually consume a lot and way more than a platform like Facebook, for instance. So try to really be on those platforms and type of content they consume way more than before. And I think it would be similar when I think the normal situation, if I may say that, will resume. Think of how we can leverage platforms like TikToks and some other really cool platforms out there.
Yeah, that actually probably leads us into the next component of this. Is TikTok something that you've done anything with so far?
We have one content on it, and we wanted to see how it goes. Didn't work out really well because it was not really a TikTok material developed. It was definitely kind of repurpose of an Instagram story or Instagram TV, sorry. But that's definitely something where we'd like to see with our digital ambassadors. So we have 7 digital ambassadors that can create content on behalf of QUT. And obviously, not saying that I'm not cool anymore, I'm not connected anymore, but I think having the peers to connect content for their peers will actually make more sense and actually bring a more authenticity into the discussion than we can as a brand or as a marketing team. So I think them is really a success to create that really cool content, what the memes or the different type of or trends of videos as well. So we will work with them to get those specific TikTok original content. I think we tested, created IGTV and tried to post it on TikTok. Didn't work. We learned. Let's move on to a next try.
Yeah, great. And are there any other elements, trends, platforms, things that you're seeing in this space that you're excited about?
I think we earlier this year tried to see our audiences, and especially our prospective audiences or our current audiences, so the students, and they are mostly all Gen Z. So we really looked at the different platforms that they were using. We got a couple of surprises, to be honest, where YouTube was one of the big one for them, where they really focused on YouTube for that community. And I think now community is really a key word in April 2020 to really focus on. So try to obviously work with our digital ambassadors to really develop those only YouTube original content to make sure that they know the different updates on the events or the type of student life activities.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I guess not altogether surprising given digital content and how much is out there at the moment. What kinds of things do you think you might be able to use YouTube for in the future?
I think we definitely noticed that there is an appetite from our audiences to consume really short video type of vlogs. I think Gen Z consume a lot of vlogs on YouTube, get a feel of their peers. So maybe some type of content we can leverage. And I think Google a couple of years ago mentioned that the Gen Z and Gen Y go on YouTube to get knowledge. I think that's over 80% of Gen Z teens says that actually YouTube has helped them to become more knowledgeable about something. I'm sure that's a platform you go to, how to change a tire, how to make bread. That's what I did recently, and the Gen Z. So it's definitely the how to and learn something. So trying to see whether there are some opportunities we can tap into in the knowledgeable content, and especially coming from a university that would make sense.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good point. I think there's probably opportunities for everyone when you think about YouTube like that, and what you might be able to share and teach via that platform.
Yeah, correct. I think that's definitely something where we're really surprised. The best content that we have is really focus on knowledge, on an expert, on an expertise, but really also about what can I learn from that. So I think that's definitely something we are going to really get going really soon in 2020.
Yeah. How do you keep yourself current across the trends, and who do you look up to in this space?
Yeah, I think it's really important that social media manager spends a lot of time on social media to learn about social media. So I think that's a bit full on and overwhelming for some of them. Spending some time on blogs, on newsletters. I don't think you need to be subscribed to thousands of newsletters. I basically subscribe to a couple social media social media today, but also try to follow a couple of really key social media influencers or in that content space. Or I'm a big fan of Jay Bear from Convince and Convert, and I would definitely highly recommend you to follow his blog and his social media platform. But try to really get to the news. What's the breaking news from the big social media platforms, but also what are the different trends that your audiences are actually adapting at the moment. So spending time on reading kind of white papers and reports about Gen Z or millennial, that's what I definitely spend time on sometimes.
I actually met Jay Bear at Social Media Marketing World in the States last year, so I'm a fan as well. Are there any specific newsletters or websites that you refer to that you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, there are a couple of others that I look into. One based also in Australia, that's a social media agency called We Are Social, and they have the Tune Up Tuesday, I believe, and that's kind of a social media roundup of the week, of the different activities. So that's definitely something I would highly you to look at. They do a really cool Insta story every Tuesday night. Otherwise, subscribe to their newsletter. So We Are Social and Social Media Examiner. I know that's really the one in the US. But that's definitely something where I've seen a couple of Brisbane people writing for the publication. And I think that's definitely something that talks about the industry, but also kind of into the specific of the platforms, Instagram stories, and the how-to. So I learned a lot about, really making sure we create that engaging Insta story. So a couple of tips that, I didn't know. That's really good to know. So learning from those sources as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for being on the podcast today. There's been so many great tips and elements that you've shared here. If someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
I think they contact me on LinkedIn. I'm Flo Lemans. I'm also rebranding my website. I used to be florentlemans.com, and now I'm like, no, I'm going to change to flolemans.com. So that would be definitely soon out. But also Twitter. I think I'm not Flo, I'm Florent LM. But if you search Flo Lemans, you should find me. So that's definitely a platform I'm on the most.
Awesome. We will include links to those in the show notes as well. Thanks again for being here today, Flo. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Louisa, for your time, and thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please remember to subscribe. My recommended action item from today's show is to look at your social media plan and check that you've adapted it enough to be relevant to your audience at this time. We're currently providing access to a free training session on marketing ROI. Visit interactiveminds.com and click on the link on the homepage to get access. You can access today's show notes at interactiveminds.com/podcast. See you next week.